Hello, I'm Inash Rewiński. Welcome on board the Eastern Express. As always, I hope you enjoy the journey. Now, in this episode, we're focusing on a crisis that has been simmering on the edge of Europe. The escalating aggression from illegal migrants at the Polish-Belarusian border. But don't be misled. This isn't just a random spike in border skirmishes. No, this is a part of a calculated hybrid warfare strategy orchestrated by none other than Russia. Yes, you heard that right. Russia is using desperate migrants as pawns in a geopolitical chess game, and Poland is caught in the crossfire. If you've got déjà vu, that's because this story goes back years already. In fact, the very inception of our channel. So without further ado, let's see a quick recap of the situation at the border between Poland and Belarus.
In response to the escalating migratory pressure and recent attacks on Polish border services, Prime Minister Donald Tusk has announced the reinstatement of a 200-meter buffer zone along the border with Belarus. The decision comes after a series of incidents, including one where a soldier was stabbed by a migrant and succumbed to his injuries.
We made a decision together with the Army and Border Guard commanders present here that we will do everything to make your service as safe as possible from your point of view and effective in terms of border protection.
The reinstatement of the buffer zone is part of a broader strategy to strengthen border defenses, which includes the deployment of 100 elite soldiers to reinforce the current border patrol teams.
It will be a limited access zone. It will be introduced to ensure the safety of all of those who are near the border with Belarus, because we see that Putin and Lukashenko's hybrid war is dangerous.
The gravity of the situation is underscored by a recent incident involving Polish soldiers firing warning shots not only towards a group of migrants, but also across the border onto Belarusian territory. The incident has raised alarms about the potential for escalation into larger conflicts.
And now, as always, let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Now, let's break this down. A Polish soldier was seriously injured at the border and unfortunately later succumbed to his injuries. 3 days after the first incident, 2 more soldiers were wounded in another clash. These aren't isolated incidents. We're talking about migrants armed with knives attached to poles attempting to stab Polish soldiers and border guard officers, as well as other uniformed services. This isn't a case of desperate migrants losing their minds and going on a rampage. This is a well-orchestrated tactic of transnational terrorism, driven by Russian and Belarusian operatives. They are not just trying to cross the border, they are aiming to destabilize and polarize. The aim of this operation is to erode public trust in government institutions and tarnish Poland's image on the international stage. We need to understand the broader goals here. The attackers aren't just aiming to breach the border, they want to distract us. They are diverting attention from other hybrid activities like smuggling agents, terrorists, or criminals across different streams of migrants. They want the Polish authorities to react poorly, creating an international scandal. Extreme reactions have already emerged. Pro-migrant voices call for inaction, labeling the border guard and military as criminals. They claim to oppose lawlessness and violence against migrants, but their proposed restrictions would lead to dire consequences. Letting migrants in would polarize society, undermine Poland's credibility, and push the European Union, especially Germany, into negotiating with Lukashenko and Putin. Remember, back in 2015, the European Union and Germany made concessions to Turkey to stem the migrant flow. History, it seems, might actually be about to repeat itself. The timing isn't coincidental either. This escalation came right before the elections to the European Parliament. It is not about who wins, but about spreading chaos and fear. Calls for lethal force against migrants, though extreme, could provoke the attackers' desired response. A massacre at the border would play right into their hands, discrediting Poland internationally and triggering a humanitarian backlash. It would paralyze border security efforts and sow doubt among the public. The ultimate goal is to neutralize the hybrid attacks, safeguarding soldiers and officers, while undermining the aggressor's objectives. Hybrid warfare isn't confined to the border. It is fought in the information and cognitive realms too. Warsaw now needs comprehensive measures, from enhanced border security to strategic communication campaigns. The Polish government must expand its efforts to deter migrants from coming to Belarus and disrupt the existing smuggling networks. In conclusion, cooperation with the countries from which the migrants originate remains crucial. Sanctioning airlines transporting migrants to Russia might also be an option. It is a complex struggle, but with strategic, multifaceted responses, we can counter this hybrid warfare. And now, here to shed more light on the issue at hand is our guest, Anatol Kotal from the Belarusian Democratic Forces Forum. Hello and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello.
So what would you say is Lukashenko playing at right now? It is clear that it is something of a repetition of a scenario that had already been put in place once, but also it is escalating. We have a casualty. Where do you think it is likely to lead?
Unfortunately, it's not only about Lukashenko's play, it's not about his game, it's about games of two dictators, about Lukashenko and Mr. Putin, because now it's clear as snow that behind Lukashenko and this migration crisis there is Mr. Putin, because most of the migrants who are more aggressive than in previous times, they have Russian visas. So they came to Russia and they are being transferred to Belarus, and now they are trying to cross illegally Belarusian Polish border.
And this violence has the advantage, at least for the people in question, of plausible deniability. I mean, it's difficult to determine who did that. And even if we actually caught the perpetrator, well, Lukashenko and Putin could always say, well, it's not our fault. They became radicalized along the way.
That's true. It's a sort of hybrid war. These two dictators conducting against European Union and Poland in particular, because they can utilize this migration weapon to any extent they would like to do, because they are still denying that they have something in common. They keep on saying that it's Europe who is guilty, because it's Europe who invited these guys to come.
I mean, it was a while ago, and the policy all across the European Union has been changing since then. One could even say cynically that, it's the fault of the European Union for having a way better living standard than Russia, so that these migrants, they don't want to go to Russia, they want to go to countries such as Germany, such as France, and so on. But moving back to a more serious assessment of the situation, you're saying that they are denying this, but we do have the evidence, right? I mean, Belarusian travel agencies were involved right from the very start, weren't they?
That's true, but unfortunately, in normal world, this should lead to change of their behavior. But in the reality we are facing right now, Lukashenko and Putin do not care about their image, about how they are being perceived in the world. They get used to their status of non-shake-handable guys, and that's it. So they keep on trying and keep on pushing on on Poland, on European Union, with trying to put more pressure to bring more turbulence to this area in order to stop or to influence, to deteriorate Europeans' help to Ukraine right now.
So that's exactly the question I wanted to ask. What is their objective? Because it seems like, they are pariahs, they are dictators, they are proud of it, apparently. But what are they playing at? What is the ultimate goal that they want to achieve here?
The ultimate goal actually is to provoke Europe to bring the new Iron Curtain. Unfortunately, right now we see that it's being built right now, because Poland is strengthening its wall on the border. It's quite understandable from the point of view of Polish security, of the security of the country. But on the other hand, this doesn't bring any security in longer perspective. I'll be a little bit metaphoric. Even in Game of Thrones, the wall didn't prevent it, the civilization from these hordes of dead people from north. The same situation we're facing right now, because the wall is temporary solution, which could ease the situation, but from my perspective, from my point of view, European Union and Poland and other neighbors of Belarus should go to the roots of the problem. And the roots of the problem are two regimes in Belarus and Russia. Until they are not defeated, the problem will exist.
So you're saying that they want this Iron Curtain to reappear. Why would they want that? I mean, there are many commentators suggesting that Putin might be preparing for confrontation with NATO. In such case, he would rather have an open border through which he could basically launch an attack. Right? So if he actually has an Iron Curtain with all the security measures, this would seem to defeat the point.
That's true, but from my point of view, Putin is trying to secure his field of influence, his sphere of influence, and the better way is to provoke your neighbor to build the wall, because you are not spending money on it. And this also guarantees that your neighbor is not eager and is not willing to fight with you. So Putin will be satisfied if the Iron Curtain will be on Belarus and Polish border, somewhere in Ukraine, and this will secure his interests. He will just sleep well, because from one hand he would reinstall some sort of Soviet Union. From the other hand, he would reach some compromise with the European Union, because nobody would be eager to go behind this wall.
So he wants to make sure that Belarus never becomes democratic. And also he's trying to do the same thing with at least a part of Ukraine. Now, coming back to what he wants to achieve, do you think he also wanted to boost the standing of populist parties in Central and Eastern Europe and beyond by basically engineering this crisis so that they would get more votes? And let's be honest, many of these parties are pro-Russian, or at least, Russian understanders, right? Was that the plan? Do you believe that this is what he might have wanted to achieve here?
I see, I would say, clear logic here, because the easiest reaction on migration crisis is the rise of ultra-right parties, which are against illegal migrants, which are for the stronger hand of the state. So on the one hand, Lukashenko and Putin, they trying to influence European unity and European assistance for Ukraine, and on the other hand, they are undermining the Europe from inside by provoking these ultra-right opinions, by promotion of ultra-right parties.
They are creating the problem, they are creating a would-be solution for the problem, which in fact does not solve the problem itself, but it solves their problems, right? The problems they have with the European Union being unified and being willing to help Ukraine. And at the same time, they are conducting nuclear exercises just to make sure that people are also intimidated. What would you say would be the best option to counter this? Would you say that the West has missed a window of opportunity during the protests against Lukashenko when he rigged the elections? Because not much was done back then. So Lukashenko was able to capture once again whatever remained of the opposition there, or at least to trample it to the ground. Do you think anything can be done at this stage, now that Putin is also, having a firm grip on Belarus?
I guess Europe and Belarusian opposition should sit together and rethink the situation and also analyze the consequences of 2020, because on the one hand we have the war against Ukraine, we have deep social, political and demographic crisis in Belarus, and we have this crisis of security in the Central and Eastern Europe, because in order to bring more democracy, to bring more stability and security to the region, Europe should be united in its will to face Mr. Putin, not to build the wall, but to invent solutions which will provoke, which will lead to sustainable changes in Russia, mainly. And there are several, I would say, recipes for that, either to prepare to this imminent conflict with Russia, either to have, for example, talks with Chinese people, with Mr. Xi, with China, in order to put the pressure from the other side on Russia and Belarus, because they are totally dependent right now on the trade with China.
Do you think it's still possible to do that? I mean, do we have the leverage over China? What can we propose in exchange? It seems that for China it has become a lucrative business to keep Russia afloat, and by extension, Mr. Lukashenko too.
That's true, but from my point of view, Europe is more valuable for China than Russia. And, for example, Poland is more valuable for China in comparison to Belarus. So there is a leverage, there is a place for negotiations. If there is no will to prepare for direct conflict with Russia, which, from my perspective, anyhow is inevitable. It could be just postponed by the wall, by these talks with China, but at the end there will be a direct conflict with Russia.
Well, just a quick question, because we're actually running out of time. What form would it take? Hybrid warfare?
At the beginning, yes, and we are facing this hybrid war right now. It's not only about migrations, it's also about sabotage in different countries of Europe.
So perhaps further sanctions would do the trick, but for that we need unity. And there is still fertilizer and other products flowing in from Belarus and Russia into the European Union. Food for thought for the European leadership then. And this is basically what we can say on the subject for the time being. And Natal Kota was our guest here today on Eastern Express. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you.
And now we're moving on to Eastern News Flash, bringing you all the other stories from the East that you really don't want to miss. The district court in Warsaw has issued a European arrest warrant for Tomasz Schmidt, a former judge who is under suspicion of espionage and has fled to Belarus. The move comes after Interpol declined to issue a red notice for Schmidt, who has become a controversial figure following his defection.
Former Judge Tomasz Schmidt first came into the limelight when he attended a press conference in Minsk on May 6, seeking protection from the Polish state. The National Prosecutor's Office in Poland swiftly initiated an investigation to his alleged involvement with the Foreign Intelligence Service and the potential harm his action could cause to Poland's security. The European arrest warrant was submitted by the National Prosecutor's Office at the end of May, aiming to facilitate Schmidt's arrest should he attempt to cross an EU border. The issuance of the warrant underscores the gravity of the allegations against Schmidt and represents a coordinated effort by Polish authorities to address the situation. The case has garnered widespread attention, not only due to the espionage allegations, but also because of Schmidt's previous notoriety for engaging in an online smear campaign against fellow judges in 2019, which was reportedly sponsored by the Justice Ministry under the then right-wing government of Poland.
African students in Russia have become the latest targets in a recruitment drive for the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. As Russia faces manpower shortages due to significant losses, officials have resorted to pressuring thousands of migrants and foreign students to join their military.
The recruitment tactics in Russia are alarmingly coercive, with students desperate to maintain their residency rights being threatened with their cancellations unless they agree to enlist. This strategy mirrors the methods employed by Yevgeny Prigozhin's Wagner mercenary group, which has been known to recruit convicts through a combination of financial incentives and intimidation. The UK Defence Ministry had previously reported on Russia's campaign to recruit foreigners, particularly from former USSR countries, to bolster its forces amid escalating casualties. The situation has become so dire that some African individuals on work visas have faced detention and threats to immediate deportation, only avoiding mobilization by paying bribes. These foreign recruits receive minimal training before being thrust into battle, resulting in exceedingly high casualty rates. The practice has been ongoing since the early days of the full-scale invasion, highlighting the Kremlin's desperate measures to sustain its war efforts.
Russian-installed authorities in Crimea have launched an aggressive recruitment campaign to bolster their armed forces. The campaign, which includes a barrage of outdoor and online advertisements, promises high pay and land incentives to potential recruits.
The strategic peninsula of Crimea, annexed by Russia in 2014, has since been transformed into a military stronghold. From it, Russian forces have conducted missile and drone strikes into Ukrainian-controlled territories. The recent surge in recruitment activities suggests a desperate attempt by Moscow to reinforce its military presence in the region. The increase in advertising for contractual army service is supposedly unprecedented. Employment centers in Crimea are said to be facilitating frequent meetings between job seekers and military enlistment office representatives. The authorities are enticing recruits with the prospect of obtaining special military operations status, which would grant them lifelong benefits, despite claims that the war will conclude by autumn. An anonymous activist from the Liberate Crimea movement has indicated that the recruitment drive is due to two factors: a new quota set by the Russian Minister of Defense for contract soldiers in Crimea and the depletion of willing recruits from the local population. The activists emphasize that the underlying reason for both is the Crimean authorities' struggle to meet the recruitment targets set by the Russian Ministry of Defense.
And for this episode of Eastern Express, it's the end of the line. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.